What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of my top 100 movies from the 1980s. This video will complete the first 50 films on this list. If you've missed any of the past episodes, I'll have them linked here below. They're on a playlist on my channel as well to catch up on if needed. Today we're diving into movies number 60 through 51. There's plenty of comedy on this list, a splash of drama, some science fiction, a superhero, and more. And as always, I won't be covering the synopsises just to keep the video moving along. They will be in the description below as well if interested. So with all that said, let's get into it. Kicking this list off at number 60, I have a little movie that started with a look that led to an evening, a mistake he'd regret for the rest of his life when Michael Douglas learns that one-night stands can be murder in the 1987 erotic thriller Fatal Attraction, also starring Glenn Close from director Adrian Lyne. Now, this is one of the all-time great erotic thrillers, and I think it 100% thrives on the intensity from Douglas and Close. They have what I would say is just a sexually charged chemistry that just ignites on the screen to really sell this story of temptation and just remorse and regret. And Glenn Close is delightfully deranged. She's sexy, alluring, and completely unhinged, which makes this movie that much more compelling as Douglas's one-night stand just spirals out of control and destroys his life. This is a movie that just relies on its raw emotion, and it delivers a very tension-filled watch. The suspense continually escalates until it peaks with a satisfying finale that will leave you reeling. We're going to go full post-apocalyptic for my number 59 pick. In the future, cities will become deserts, roads will become battlefields, and the hope for mankind will appear as a stranger in the 1981 action thriller Mad Max 2, also known as The Road Warrior, starring Mel Gibson, directed by George Miller. Now, this is a movie that certainly holds up well because of its awesome practical stunt work and just its creative ambition overall. It really does build onto the bleak dystopian setting of the first film, and it ups the ante with many great elements. This world in this story is filled with many over-the-top and eccentric characters to give Mad Max some truly menacing villains to go up against. The creation of all these vehicles is innovative, as are just the countless action sequences. They are still just great to watch more than 30 years later. And of course, it has Mel frickin' Gibson as Mad Max to just bring it all together in just iconic fashion. My next pick is literally one of the last action movies of the 1980s. It centers on two LA cops that are going to have to work together even if it kills them. And my number 58 pick, the 1989 action comedy Tango and Cash, starring Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell. Now, critically, this movie does have its flaws, but I can't help but love it. I grew up watching this movie. Stallone and Russell are fantastic. They're having fun together, and it really does translate nicely on screen. Their banter delivers plenty of amusement and solid action. And I mean, sure, they're both hamming it up, but that's kind of part of the charm of this movie. It's just carried by a ridiculous plot line, but one that still manages to provide enough to connect all the action and laughs together. It has plenty of one-liners, bravado, Terry Hatcher, a comically over-the-top villain and film legend Jack Palance, and Russell and Stallone carry it. They both get their moments. Stallone certainly piggybacks on Russell's comedic timing, but it's all effective, and when the explosive finale kicks in, it delivers all the gusto and explosive spectacle that you want in an 80s action movie. Coming up next at number 57 is a movie that showed every dream has a price and that greed is good, and that would be Oliver Stone's 1987 stock market drama Wall Street, starring Michael Douglas, Charlie Sheen, and Daryl Hannah. Oliver Stone explores Wall Street like the layers of an onion here with this film. Charlie Sheen is fantastic. He captures just how the greed and the atmosphere of Wall Street and wealth can rot your ethics, but it's just all carried by the characters that really thrive on the raw emotion of their actions and the consequences of their actions, with their own moral codes being tested. Michael Douglas, I mean, he delivers one of his best performances as the slick and shady Gordon Gekko that has no remorse for anything other than his own personal gain, and it just captures a controlled, frantic vibe of stock trading that builds effectively unnerving tension. This movie has an unintentional style to it, as it just, I would say, explores the materialistic hunger and the capitalism of the 1980s that kind of holds up because we're not that different today. Next up, I just have a personal favorite comedy of mine coming in at number 56. It's a story of three guys that are down on their luck and up to their necks in senoritas, margaritas, banditos, and bullets, and that would be 1986's Three Amigos, starring Chevy Chase, Steve Martin, and Martin Short, from director John Landis. Now, this is a nostalgic favorite of mine and probably higher than it would be on other people's lists, but I love Martin, Chase, and Short in this film, and I think their delivery of the slapstick humor is just a delight to sit back and watch. I love their chemistry together and just the ridiculously silly plotline. It's all just a comedic escape into another time and place, in our own time and place. I mean, it's just filled with sight gags and cheesy but clever jokes and bits, and sure, some of the comedy is a bit lazy, but I mean, this just kind of works. I mean, Martin, Chase, and Short, they weave great timing, they sell all the self-referential humor, it provides simple laughs, adventure, and despite its flaws, it's just a feel-good movie from the 80s that I kick on anytime I need a pickup. Moving along to my number 55 pick is a movie that told a story that touched the world about an ugly little alien and his little friends, and the iconic 1982 adventure drama from Steven Spielberg, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, starring Drew Barrymore and Henry Thomas. I mean, what can you say about this masterpiece that hasn't already been said? I grew up on this film. I've seen it countless times. I've started eating Reese's Pieces as a kid because I loved E.T. It's filled with drama and emotion as it weaves its just heartwarming coming-of-age tale of friendship and growing up. The performances from the young cast, the balanced storytelling, the triumphant music, the visuals, everything just works together like peanut butter and jelly. It's an adventure you really can invest in, no matter how many times you've seen it. This Spielberg classic was a staple of the 80s that delivered a complete package, one that still holds up today because E.T. captured the hearts of the world, and he did it in only one film to become not only an icon for the decade, but an icon in cinema overall. John Carpenter makes a return to my list for my number 54 pick, a classic horror flick that delivers the ultimate in alien terror, 1982's The Thing, with Kurt Russell, Keith David, and the Quaker Oat Man himself, Wilford Brimley, leading a stellar ensemble cast. This Carpenter classic is one of the all-time great body horror flicks out there, and it weaves just effective terror and suspense. The frigid remote locations create that uneasy isolation that builds a genuine fear for this cast. The practical effects were cutting edge, they're gruesome and just perfectly horrid as an alien rampages on this group. The contained vibe creates an unnerving claustrophobia that fits the plot perfectly. Russell commands, but really it's an ensemble effort that creates just a humanized group of victims that you can root for. It keeps a quick pace, and The Thing still holds up as one of the more effective movies in the genre. Next up at number 53 is the first comic book movie to make this list. Comic book flicks back in the 80s were drastically different than what we see today, but 1989's Batman from director Tim Burton, starring Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, and Kim Basinger, just changed the genre as we know it. Despite the years that have passed, I think this movie still holds up as one of the great comic book movies out there. Burton just creates a deliciously fantastical world for Gotham, and just Keaton and Nicholson are perfectly cast. Subtly, the Joker is the star, and Nicholson just captures a comical madness for the clown prince of crime. Keaton is unassumingly commanding as the Dark Knight, as he showcases style and swagger in the role of Bruce Wayne. And overall, this film is just filled with creativity and style that can pull you into the world of the story. And sure, the plot is a bit nonsensical, but with a bold soundtrack and endless visual style, this movie is still a winner all these years later. I think many would hail this to be an all-time great comedy. It's my number 52 pick, a movie about a man that wanted to keep the world safe for democracy and to meet girls, and that man would be film legend Bill Murray in 1981's Stripes from Ivan Reitman, also starring Harold Ramis and John Candy. I don't know what it is, but watching Murray, Ramis, and Candy in this movie can always put me in a good mood no matter how down I am. The comedic timing and the sense of humor of this storyline shines from start to finish, from the writing to the characters to the comedic bits, the sight gags, to all the physical and situational humor. All of it works. To me, this is just a buffet of laughs that drops in effective spots of action and adventure to keep the pace moving. Comedy meets the military in the most delightfully of amusing ways. Everybody's having fun in these roles, and I think it translates on screen to result in one of the classic comedies from the decade. And for the last movie on this list, coming in at number 51, is a movie that was set in the future that is now the past. The tagline said that in the year 2019, the best men didn't run for president, they ran for their lives. And the just wildly eccentric The Running Man from 1987, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, directed by Paul Michael Glaser. I was around 10 when this movie came out. It was another of those films from the 80s I probably shouldn't have been watching at my age, but I did and I loved it. This movie was filled with quotable dialogue and just comical visions of what the future would look like. There are endless, bold, and insane and just cartoonish characters for Arnold to contend with. I mean, visually, this film's on its own level. The lighting, the wardrobes, the stunt work, the action, all of it really are a treat. It's just hyper violent, it's routinely gory and laced with 80s bravado as Arnold just commands the screen with Jesse the Body Ventura and a pristine hairpiece battling with Arnold, just delivering a timeless appeal. I mean, movies don't get much more wild and over the top or more 80s than The Running Man, and that's why it'll always be a classic. And that will conclude my list for today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of my top 100 movies from the 1980s series. Thank you guys so much for tagging along for these videos. It's been such a good time looking back at all these movies. Are there any on this list that you enjoy? Maybe a couple you haven't seen and are now interested in? Let me know all your comments down below. Also, be on the lookout for the next video coming very soon. And until then, I'll see you guys at the movies.